so we're going to move on to the next order of business, which is the update on the Dascomb Road project. We've allowed 10 minutes for the Lapoli companies to give the board an update on the Dascomb Road project.
I saw Rick, I think his name is, outside.
TEC.
Yep. Yeah, he was sitting here for the longest time.
Hey, good evening. My name is Rick Freiberg from TEC, civil engineer, here tonight to present the board with an update on the Dascomb Road project. Hey, thank you. So the last time we were formally presenting in front of the board was at the end of August. At the time, we had told you that we were going to proceed on a dual-track approach for the project, which we started right after that. The two tracks, as you remember, one of them was to proceed with an all-commercial version of the plan that's allowable within the existing zoning today. That special permit process has been filed with the planning board, and we're scheduled to have our first public hearing on January 9th, I believe it is, that Tuesday. The other track, track 2, is the PUD track, which is the mechanism by which we would add a residential component to the project. Our proposal to do that is to remove a large chunk of office space that's proposed in the all-commercial plan, a little bit of retail space, remove some of that as well, and substitute it or replace it with over 55 age-restricted housing. And the way that we can move forward with that process is that we filed 2 warrant articles with the town. I'm sure that I saw your previous item, you're probably just discussing the order of the articles. The 2 articles that are filed, the first one proposes a change in zoning that will allow planned development projects to be presented in the ID2 zone, which is a zoning district that the 146 Dascomb Road site is in. The second article, and it also outlines a process for getting approval by that. What we've done to make it a more stringent approval process than is typical of planned developments is that we've required a master plan for anybody proposing a planned development project in ID2 to also seek town meeting approval of their specific project before proceeding with the planning board to actually utilize it and propose an over 55 age restricted component. So it's an extra layer that we've added on top of the typical planned development process, which is typically you just apply to the planning board. We've added a town meeting vote requirement because what we've heard through the public process is that the residents of Andover want more say over these types of projects and where they're appropriate and not appropriate within town. So those warrant articles are filed and are, I believe, going to be scheduled for the special town meeting at the end of January. So that's sort of the status of the 2 projects. We've also been doing a number of public events and meetings where residents can come out and learn about the project. We talk about usually both projects at those for a comparative analysis. Typically, the kind of questions we get at these usually revolve around traffic. Tends to be a predominant one. We also tend to discuss the exact restrictions on the age-restricted housing component. That seems to be one people ask a lot of questions about. So maybe I'll just clarify that now in case there are people here who haven't attended. But the requirement under any circumstance of planned developments in ID2 is that if a residential component is proposed, it must be age-restricted, and age-restricted is defined as one resident having attained the age of 55 years or older, and that no resident shall be under the age of 18. And that was a really important distinction because what we heard, especially early on, was that there was a concern of overcrowding the schools. And with the changing family dynamics, oftentimes people are waiting longer to have children. That there was a concern that even just restricting it to over 55, you may still have school-age children living there. And that's why that second part of that was important about no resident shall be under the age of 18. Traffic usually sort of tends to dominate the meetings. It's probably, in my opinion, probably one of the more important issues to be discussed. Usually the way it works, they'll ask us a lot of questions about the existing problems that are out there. No doubt there are a lot of challenges that are out there. We've come up with 2 different traffic studies, one for each of the projects, the all-commercial plan and for the planned development plan with the residential component. Both of them fix and alleviate the problems that are out there today, as well as accommodate the additional traffic that's generated by either project. Unequivocally, the residential project has less traffic. Our estimates are that during a weekday, when Dascomb Road is busiest, it's about 35% less traffic than the all-commercial plan. So typically when abutters are asking questions comparatively about traffic between the two, it's helpful to get the point across that the residential version has less traffic. And that's one of the reasons why we're spending a lot of time and effort out doing these meetings, is because we feel like the residential version of the project offers a number of improvements over the all-commercial version, one being less traffic, another being more green space, and another being the types of amenities that we're proposing under planned development, like a trolley, for example. So that's sort of an update on what we've been doing. Like I said, we've got filings in for both versions, one with the planning board for the all-commercial, two for the two warrant articles that allow us to seek a town meeting vote in January. And we continue to have public meetings. We also attend but don't participate directly on the ID2 task force meetings. I know I've seen a couple of the ID2 task force members here. They're doing great work. They've received a lot of documents. I know they're providing a very thorough review. I think they've met 3 times. It's a big group, and there's been a number of subcommittee committee meetings even since your last Board of Selectmen meetings. They've been very busy, hard at work, and we're pleased with what we've been observing. So I know they're doing a diligent job on behalf of the residents. So that concludes the update. But of course, we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
I see the update. I see the chair of the task force here. Have you met three times already?
That's correct. 3 times in the last 10 days or so. Last week, I guess.
Like Morris, by the way, so.
You want me to speak?
Oh, you want to?
Could I ask
Sure.
a couple of questions?
Sure. Oh, sure.
Okay, excuse me. I know, Rick, you were asked to provide some type of legal opinion as to whether you could do both the ID2 zoning change and your project on the same night. Have you had a chance to respond to?
So I've seen the draft letter from, because it's being provided by the project attorney, not by me, but I've seen the draft of that. They had conversations with the assistant AG, and she's provided informal guidance and recommendations, as well as a few other examples of when situations like this have happened. So that letter is forthcoming.
Okay.
Yes.
And your zoning article, as opposed to your project article, I guess, distinguish.
Sure.
The zoning article, this applies, as I read it, to all ID2, which would include River Road ID2 as well, not just Dascomb Road
That's correct.
ID2, right?
That's-
Okay. Okay. We're waiting for opinion as to whether your second article, the project already requires a majority, 2/3 vote. What's your impression as to what it requires?
I saw some back and forth between the attorneys today. I'm not prepared to comment on it. My impression coming into this week was that it also required a 2/3 vote, but the fact that it may only require a majority vote is news to me, and so the legal team is considering that right now.
So when you drafted them as the proponent, you didn't ask for guidance as to whether it was majority or 2/3?
No, we just we filed the warrants. The number of votes we sort of leave, I guess, up to legal counsel.
Okay. Okay. And just a question on the age restriction. Is there anything, I don't know if this is town council, is there anything that can trigger a release of the age restriction? For example, if the town falls below 10% on its affordable housing,
Sure.
can that trigger a release of such a restriction?
The answer is no. The mechanism that I think you're probably referring to, oftentimes you see with 40B projects, that after a certain period of time, those affordability restrictions can be released, and they could be leased out or have the restrictions on them changed. With this is a different mechanism. It's a 15% affordability requirement, which is not the same as like Section 8 housing or Chapter 40B. The affordability rate is dependent on the town's median income. So there's a commitment to provide 15% affordable units that runs on the deed. And so if there's ever a transfer of property of the like, that runs on the deed along with it. So it's in perpetuity, correct.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question that kind of just builds on that. How many articles do we have for the special town meeting for this project? There's 2. Both of them are related strictly to the residential.
Correct. Yep,
So-
the first article allows us to propose a second.
Okay, all right.
Think of it like that.
So the point is for the residents, then if that doesn't pass, then the commercial one is the track you'd go with.
That's correct, yep.
Okay.
And in fact, like I mentioned, we're filed with the planning board, and we have our first public hearing for the all-commercial
There's no
one.
town meeting vote required for that one.
That's
The
correct.
track, the commercial track.
Correct.
Do you have a, I'm sorry, do you have a funding commitment for the commercial option for the without residential? Do you have a financing commitment?
What's,
I don't know what you mean.
what's the relevancy of that?
I'm just curious if if they've received funding, will they pursue?
I mean, do we?
He doesn't have to answer, but I can ask him.
I'm not sure I understand. Are you related, are you,
Have you received a financing commitment for the track without residential?
I think that's not relevant.
I don't think it is
I mean, it's like I'm asking you,
Well, it's a simple answer.
Can you
Do you
afford that
know, or
target,
you're
right?
not at that point yet? It's just a
Respectfully
question.
speaking, I wouldn't be wasting the town's energy and time if we couldn't afford to do this project, so we can very much afford to do the project. Thank you.
Right, no, that was my question. My question was, do you have a written financing commitment for the project?
I think
You don't
you
have to
answered
answer it, I'm just
I think
curious.
you did answer it.
yeah, I think it's been answered.
Yes, Lynn?
Lynn Anderson, 93 Abbott Street. I'm slightly confused because I thought that the task force's charge was to examine a comparative analysis of just the Dascomb Road site, but this article will apply to all ID2 districts. And has there been any traffic impact study or financial fiscal analysis study for this? Opens up lots of potential change in areas. And I'm not, have there been preliminary studies done in the other ID2?
I thought that was the idea with the PUD. Good point. I thought the PUD was just supposed to be that area.
Site-specific.
So let me answer the question. So you are not legally allowed to spot zone. So we're not allowed to change the zoning for one parcel in town. What you can do, though, is that you can allow planned development in a zoning district. So that's what the first article does. The first article also spells out the requirements of what would be specified in a planned development project within ID2. And then any project seeking restricted housing within an ID2 under the first article would be required to provide its own fiscal analysis like this project has done. It would also require approval by town meeting. And then only after approval at town meeting would it be allowed to apply to the planning board for special permits, under which, of course, all the planning board special permit criteria still apply as well. So the first article doesn't entitle anybody to anything. The first article only allows an applicant to seek a town meeting vote on their planned development project. The second article is a project-specific article, and that's where the merits of what's being reviewed by the ID2 task force are being studied.
So have there been any preliminary studies done about, this opens up a different kind of use for the potential for a different kind of use for the other ID2 locations in town. Has there been any preliminary engineering work done of any kind to see what that impact might have been, since it's now included in the article? I understand that you have to because you don't want spot zoning, but that's a different question.
No, that would be, I mean, that
Would be done at the time.
at the time of a project proposal.
At
Correct.
town meeting.
And it would be up to each proponent to demonstrate that their project is beneficial to the town, which is the work that we're doing under this project.
I understand the scope of what you're requesting.
Well, that's true on the project plans that may come out, but I have to say, the fact that this applies to ID2 at River Road as well was news to me. When I was hearing this, I was under the impression this PUD mechanism was designed for the Dascomb Road area with a specific focus on the Dascomb Road project. So the fact that this does apply to the River Road area, and we actually changed a task force that was going to look at all ID2, and we changed its focus to just Dascomb Road. And even the zoning article itself, the macro article, has some major changes that could have major implications over at River Road. I mean, some of these waivers, allowing the planning board to waive some dimensional requirements, I mean, that's not the purpose of tonight's agenda item. It was just a brief update. But as we get into this, between now and the end of January, there's going to be a lot more issues now. The fact that this applies more broadly to all of ID2.
Well, let me, if I can just because you brought it up. So the type of dimensional requirements that are discussed in there, those are to make them consistent with what is already in the Andover bylaws for planned development. So planned development already exists. It's not a new concept in town. What's different about what we're proposing here is that it's not as simple as applying to the planning board to move ahead with a project, and the reason was to make it more restrictive, so that as site-specific projects come about, those proponents have the onus on them to demonstrate to the town that it's a beneficial project, and if they can't convince town residents at town meeting, they're not even allowed to take the next step, which is apply to the planning board. So we've intentionally set it up as a more restrictive process so that all those questions can get answered.
So the first article basically makes plan unit developments an option in ID2.
Correct.
Second article requires town meeting approval for any planned unit development in an ID2. Doesn't matter whether it's this ID2 or that ID2.
Correct, yep. So, and anybody within ID2 who wishes to propose a project that includes, and again, all the planned development is allowing you to do is include age-restricted housing. No other type of housing is allowed, just to be clear. So if there is concern about impacts on schools and the like, the same age restrictions that I described earlier apply to any planned development project. So
Article 2 mitigates the risk, so to speak, of Article 1.
correct.
By requiring a town meeting approval for any PUD in any other ID2.
Correct.
It doesn't just, if you didn't have Article 2, it would just say, hey, you could do PUDs in any ID2.
Well, it also, Article 1 also specifies how you go about it. So, like I said,
Right.
planned development you can do right now in the general business district and the mixed-use business district in town. The process for that, basically it's downtown.
Yeah.
The process for that is to apply to the planning board for a special permit, and that's it. What Article 1 does is it includes ID2 in that language, so it changes the zoning language to say general business district, mixed-use district, and ID2. And then it says, for ID2 though, you don't get to just go to planning board. First, you have to approve to the residents that your project is worthy and attain a vote at town meeting. So Article 1 outlines that process. Article 2, in this case, is actually our proposed project article. So it is our planned development proposal. So in Article 2, we provide all the things that we say are required in Article 1.
Couple other quick points on it. You had mentioned no impacts to schools at age 18. The threshold for schools impact, I think, is age 23. So that's just as a side note. A lot of people think age 18 is the threshold.
It's 22, but.
Age
yeah,
22 or 23.
Yeah, special needs.
That, and, but a little bit more, as you said, traffic is a major concern to people. I haven't looked at the study. I hear it's about 700 pages long, but what is the current average daily vehicle flow, so to speak, that is presently there versus what commercial would be versus what, versus what residential would be?
Wasn't an update.
We mentioned 35%. So, 35% of what? I mean, if we're doing 10,000 units, 10,000 vehicles a day, this is a great opportunity for you to share, why the PUD is better.
Sure.
If we're doing 10,000 units a day, you're going to go to 20,000 with commercial, but residential is 12,000. Something like that, just so I can wrap my head around it.
On the tip of my fingers, I don't have the existing daily flows on the ramps in Dascomb Road. They're big numbers. They're numbers in the 15s to 20s of thousands of cars per day. With the all-commercial plan, the site would generate, I think it's about 8,000 trips per day. And those are called primary trips. Just to be clear what that means, a vehicle into the site counts as one, a vehicle leaving the site counts as another one. So if you go to work and leave, that's two trips, as an example of how those counts work. So the all-commercial version is about 8,000. The residential version is about 5,800, I believe, is the number, and that's for weekday traffic volumes.
Okay.
And the reason it's such a substantial drop is we're substituting office, which is a pretty high traffic generator, with age-restricted housing, which is a pretty low traffic generator, and 225 units are what's proposed, so it's a substantial square footage, so it winds up being a pretty substantial decrease in traffic.
Right, so you're looking at the addition of potentially 8,000 trips versus 5,800 trips.
Correct, on a weekday, correct.
Yep.
I think this underscores the reason why we put the task force in place, was to vet this stuff out,
Yeah, it's,
so that this group can look at it and
Right, we'll get an
distill it.
update from the task force when they're done with their work, but I know Mr. Morris is here too. And I did say that you might want to speak. You certainly can, because this is here, so.
Now?
Yep, now. Now, Coach?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very briefly, we have a charge from the board to make a comparative analysis of the commercial use, so-called, and the apartment use, so-called. And I come before you tonight to tell you that we're not going, I'm informed by Ms. Anderson that we have to, in order to get into the Finance Committee report for town meeting, we have to, or the board has to make a recommendation for town meeting, its recommendation for town meeting the week of January 15th. You can't make that recommendation, presumably, until we make our recommendation. We're not going to be able to make a recommendation to you on that time frame. We have an enormous amount of work, moving quickly. Thursday will be our fourth meeting in a little over 2 weeks. Subcommittees are meeting. We're doing a real deep dive on this. Interestingly, I think this is the first time that a town committee unaffiliated with the developer is doing this kind of work. And we have an 11-person group. They are working very hard. 7:30 this morning. Janet's here tonight with me, having a lot of energy, and there's a great, I think, a consensus that we want to do the best possible job we can for the town. But we're really up against a time crush, so we won't be able to make Ms. Anderson's publication date recommendation to you. Won't make it in time. If we have a thankfully the charge does not have a date on it. But hopefully we'll be able to make a charge before a recommendation before town meeting. But that might be problematic, very frankly. We think that at the very least, our work. The work we've already performed, we're hiring our peer review consultants. We feel that at the very least that work will be useful to the planning board in its deliberations on the special permit application of the petitioner, at the very least. Hopefully our work will apply across the board, but right now I want to make sure expectations are in balance here.
I think that confirms the discussion that came up, at least in a couple of our meetings, was the time frame. And I know the warrant was open, so private warrant article could be inserted. I'm just concerned that if it's not, the job isn't completely done.
Well, I can't speak for the task force, but I think there is a strong reluctance to make any recommendation unless it is has a strong foundation, whatever that recommendation is. So if we can't, we can't. You're not going to force it.
I was going to say, Ms. Morris, when I watched your last two meetings, I took the concern to go beyond a January 8th making a recommendation. The general sense I got from your board that seemed to go around the table was there simply wasn't enough time to even satisfy the requirements before the January 29th meeting. So I'd just like you to comment on that. It seems to extend, at least from what I've seen of the feedback from your board, it's not just about whether you can advise our board by the time the warrant closes, but whether or not you could actually do your task and do your job in time for the January 29th.
I think it's problematic.
Okay, am I capturing the sentiment there from what I saw in the room, going around the room?
I think that's a fair
board members?
fair description.
There's serious concern?
As the Board of Selectmen will appreciate, every time a rock is turned over, more issues present themselves. I think another factor of that the board or the task force can agree on is that this town meeting article has incredible importance to the community, both in the specific present and in the future, as has been discussed here. This is a game changer. This is a game changer. So we better get it right, and we better be ready to answer the questions of the Board of Selectmen and whomever else the Board of Selectmen wants to hear from us. So, again, I think, Mr. Landry, I think your description is accurate.
Right, and if I could, I'd like to, Ms. Clark said something, I managed to catch the video of your meeting and discussion this morning. I think Ms. Clark, who's here, made a very observant comment, which is this vetting process is not just the task force itself buckling down and doing their research and meeting when they have to and getting it done. It is doing that work, formulating the appropriate conclusions, and then providing a forum for the public to come in and not just to watch you as you do your research, but actually to participate and engage with you on your findings. And I think, if I had it right, I think that's what Ms. Clark was referring to when she said there was an obligation to engage the public. And I don't see at all how you possibly will have the time to not only do your own research, but then to come to your conclusions, create the findings, and engage with the public so that they can get educated prior to going to town meeting. Just an observation.
Yes, and we spoke about that this morning. As you didn't watch Good Morning America this morning, I guess, but our conclusions have to be examined and have to be clear, and certainly we have to have the townspeople have to feel free to come in during this part of the process. When we do come to preliminary findings, this is my anticipation. I'm not saying this with any authority, but if we do come, when we come to preliminary findings, they have to be vetted. People, will much as we did in the OPEB process, bring people in and fire away. But certainly, all through the process, the public is invited, and we're meeting an alternate 7:30 a.m. and 5:30 p.m. So, because of the requirements of people members have at work and so forth, so everyone's welcome at all times.
Can I ask you, Mike, I was just looking at the charter of the task force, and, I guess the 2 bullet points are, review and analyze build-out scenarios and investigate proposed PUD build-out scenarios. Let me ask you, is the task force looking at what is it that would make a by right project more acceptable to the community, or is the task force, because I haven't watched your meetings, but is the task force focusing on, what is it that the community would like to see as improvements to a by right project, or is the task force looking at, what is it, or whether the community is open to a residential component? Because, obviously there's the I guess there's the by right component, which is going to have to go through planning board review and all that kind of thing. You know, and the task force certainly can provide additional input, like, oh, well, we'd like to see green space, you know, on this. And then there's the PUD component of it, where, you know, what is it, is the community open to making this a combined residential, commercial project? So what would you say the task force is focusing on?
Well, right now, we're focusing on getting the facts together. We're in the process of hiring our consultants, our peer consultants. We're in the process of determining the parameters of exactly what we want to, what we need to examine in order to make a good comparison, a valid comparison. So I think to do that, Dan, I think we have to look at both options in depth. We have to make some judgments among ourselves, the positives and the negatives, and when we come to preliminary findings over what, if anything, reveals itself in those investigations, and we make those preliminary findings, then we're going to have a public meeting, I guess, and have people come forward and we'll present those findings, and people can respond to them.
So you're looking at, is it fair to say that you're looking at pros and cons of Project A and Project B?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And-
That was the charge.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, so, and I'm just trying to understand
Yeah.
the level of depth, you know, so it's pros and cons of Project A by right, Project B, PUD, and
Yeah.
and here's how each of these projects would impact the community. And
Yes.
do you foresee coming out and saying the committee recommends Project A versus Project B? Do you foresee that as a deliverable, Mike?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
That's a question. I'm going to, the 800-pound gorilla in the room here is, I'm going to ask the developer, the submitter. It's a private article. You have the right. The warrant was open. It closed. We put a task force in place, but there's a lot of concern that there may not be a full, complete job being able to do by this task force. Again, you're right to do it. You submitted it. You become at your peril, really, if the information's done. So my question is that you willing to take that risk, I guess, for your project and not go to the regular town meeting? That's really that's what I'm hearing from the task force, that they may not be ready. So that actually, to me, it disadvantages the community, probably disadvantages the applicant as well if it's not done. So just ask the question, is that you're right, it's on the warrant, but have you have consideration on that? Does that concern you at all, or is we just going to plow through and...
Just to follow up on that, I take that as a rhetorical question. We are staying away from those kinds of questions.
Right, no, it's not relevant to the task force.
You're not, by following your charge, you're not factoring any potential analysis of the rest of the ID2 district.
Not at this time.
These warrant articles relate,
I understand.
affect all of ID2, and your charge so far has really been on the by right versus residential on this
So
particular
far, yes.
parcel. That's all it is, because that's all that's in your charge, right?
But we're not afraid to go there. I think it's fair to say, if it's necessary.
But the PUD is really what we were asking you to look at and compare the PUD with both sides of the PUD, whether it include residential or not include residential. That's what the charge is.
Yeah, the board's, frankly, ahead of us on the issues that you're raising. You've been working on this a lot longer than certainly I have. Some of the members of our task force have been involved for quite a period of time. We can't attempt to make a recommendation and create a problem in the community, that's just common sense. A comparative analysis would require, I think, a valid comparative analysis would require an examination of the effect of the by right or the town meeting versions. We can't, I don't think we can be wearing blinders in this situation. We can't recommend something that might be very positive for this site and have negative
And Mr. Morris,
implications for other sites. That wouldn't be, that wouldn't make a lot of sense to me.
okay, and please tell me if I heard Paul Matarazzo correctly, I think this morning at your meeting, talking about the process the planning board will go through on the by right submission that has been submitted. The first planning board meeting on that will be January 9th?
January 9th.
Okay, and from what I heard him say is they will typically lay out the issues, divide them up, and then lay out a schedule at which all subsequent meetings that they will address that. So that is clearly going to extend well beyond January 29th.
Yes,
Just for the planning board itself
yes,
to vet the by right,
Yes.
right? Okay.
yes.
Thanks for the answer, Alex's question.
Yeah, our expectation of that process is going to be 4 to 6 months or so.
Right, okay, thank you.
So that's a real question. I think what I'd like to do is to allow the task force to continue to work hard to answer any questions that come up. I'd like the process to continue and on a parallel track for the all-commercial project to continue. I do realize that there is an amount of time between now and July 29th for the public to make a decision of whether they
January
want...
29th.
Oh, January 29th, I apologize. January 29th, what did I say?
July.
There's no meeting July 29th.
So, the way I look at it, Alex, is this. I'd like the process to continue. I do understand that there is...
I don't even think the planning board can get done by that time.
You know, I think this, as a developer, as the one who put the warrant article in, I think it's a better project with housing, but I'm excited about the commercial aspect of it. I think what's really important is this project was presented and talked about in the town for over 4 years now, and we're anxious to get started.
I'd like to
And we're
just focus
anxious
one
to
at
get
a
started.
time.
Yeah,
Just
we're
on that
anxious to get
question,
started.
Sal.
We're anxious
So-
to get started.
Okay.
And what I'd like to do is let the process continue. I'm not prepared to change anything right now, and I'd like to keep an open mind as this continues. But I am anxious for the all-commercial project to continue also.
Okay, anything further from the audience? Yes.
It sounds to me like the
You have to tell,
biggest...
we all know who you are,
I'm
but please
sorry,
tell us who you are.
Susan Scott, 30
Thank you,
Patient
Susan.
Street. And I went to one of the meetings that Sal Poli's held at Bancroft School. Sounds to me like traffic is the biggest issue and the biggest concern in town. And I know it sounds like from the presentation I heard, there have been traffic studies and there's an analysis of what the traffic would, one, will the traffic solutions they proposed work? And two, what's the difference in the traffic solutions impact on one project or the other? So my question to Mr. Morris is, I assume that one of your consultants for peer review is a traffic consultant and you're looking at their
That's correct.
traffic studies?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Just to that point, I guess, is that this, I know you'll be engaging someone to analyze that traffic report. Is that going to be someone in addition to what the planning board, like, does the planning board engage someone as well?
The planning board can use all the resources that have been provided to it. They can take, well, Mr. Poli's group has submitted a traffic study to the planning board. There will be a peer review of that traffic study. The planning board has the right to not only look at that, but they could commission their own
Gotcha. Okay.
peer
That's all.
review to be paid for by the applicant. That's up to them.
Okay. So they could use the task force peer review, or they could say, hey, we want our own.
They
peer
can say we
review.
want
Okay.
our own.
All right.
They may say, and it's quite possible, because they may say for their purposes, the peer review didn't look at this, this, and this, and we want somebody else to look. So, again, I'm not speaking for them, but they have the right to do that.
The other thing that gets layered on that is, which we don't have an answer, and we've asked for an answer, is, and I'm sure you're going to ask this question as well, good luck getting an answer, because we've asked twice, but the grant, the so-called grant that's been verbalized, but we've not seen anything in writing, is there any difference between, yeah, it doesn't really say anything.
There's no commitment.
Doesn't say anything. We never got the letter that says, here's you're going to get.
Alex, I think what's important
I'm
is it
just gonna-
relates to the
Can I
grant.
finish?
Sure.
So I think that's one of the questions we need to get in your group is, what does that grant look like for one versus the other?
When you see grant, you mean the gift?
Yeah, no, the grant that
The
the
grant.
state, the MassWorks grant,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's one of the components that,
That, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
That's part of our examination, sure. It's a very important thing.
I think probably just a point of clarification, though, regardless of whether the improvements are funded by the state or by the developer, there'll be a requirement of occupancy permits for the project. That'll be something that'll be a condition of any planning board approval, whether it's for the all-commercial project or for the residential project. So we won't be able to turn lights on until the traffic improvements that were outlined in the study are in place,
we just,
The traffic will be mitigated.
regardless of who pays for it.
It's kind of funny, I mean, we've set up another planning board, is what we've done here. Is we've really set up another planning board where they've got to go off and analyze the data, figure out how to mitigate the impact of the community, and that's the planning
it's more like
board.
the FinCon, it's more like
Well,
the
no,
FinCon.
not really. They're just going to present a comparison, that's all. I mean, that's what they're supposed to do.
I'm not sure. I think Dan's going to get this one right, because we're putting these residents, I know those words don't.
I drove over, I gave you those words too. I've agreed with you before.
Going away present. But I think he's right. I think this, unfortunately, this task force that volunteered and providing their time is becoming a shadow planning board with residents, quite frankly, that are still trying to figure out open meeting law and how these things work, and then having subcommittees to pick peer review. And it seems to be duplicating a process that we already have an established protocol for. So,
Planning board has a much wider scope, so,
Yeah.
and there is a very narrow scope.
And
so I
respectfully,
just
the
disagree.
planning board would not be looking at some of the things we're going to be looking at, like, such as OPEB and its effect on this, such as the grant that Alex raises. We're ranging far beyond, I think, the parameters of special permit requirements. I think if a planning board attempted to do what we would do, they'd probably get in trouble.
Well, yeah, but outside of their purview.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to move on quickly, but, you
Mr.
know.
Chairman, Alex, just 11 Forbes Lane. I'd like to ask Chairman Morris if you're also looking at the effects of the possible sale of the land across the street, the 78 acres of Hewlett Packard on traffic and that kinds of things.
We would be happy to look at it.
Thank you.
We're not ruling anything out.
Thank you. That's good.
We're not going to do that. We would shoot ourselves in the foot. We have to have credibility,
Yes.
or we're not in business.
Yes.
Janet Clark, and I am a member of the task force, and I'm really responding to Mr. Vispoli, and he's left, but the question's all out in the room anyway, and really to you, Sal. And the selectmen have asked this task force to do a job of comparing these two proposals and to make a recommendation, and to have it set up with town meeting with the proposal on the board without having been able to fully study it. It just makes me feel like you're you're going ahead no matter what we say. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't make me feel very good. I certainly...
And I've been to your
Pardon me?
home. I've been to your home, and I've sat in your home, and
I know,
and
I know,
I do understand your
We've
concerns.
talked a lot.
And I-
And Sal, you know I like you.
I know, and you know I like you.
I like you. And
We're well beyond a little update here.
yeah.
so-
We're in a 40-minute
It just,
conversation.
it seems to me you put the town in a tremendous situation where what do we do? And it's uncomfortable.
Well, let me just say, I think we should move on, but thank you to your team, Mr. Lapoli, and thank you, Mike, for giving us an update. And I think there are some clear choices you guys have to make, and you're going to move forward with your important work. And we all appreciate all of the hard work you've been doing right along. So you've met several times already, so we appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you.
Should this board be, I mean,
Wait a minute,
I'm sorry, no,
get the
Mr.
funds here.
Yeah, no, for the task force, they, I assume, would be looking for some guidance from us as to where to go from here. They have a charge. There's no timeline on their charge. They're going to go back to work with what direction? That they just continue?
Analyze
that's-
the
They have a
students.
charge.
Yeah, yeah. I
That's all
mean,
their charge.
yeah, okay, so the message
Are you-
from the members who supported, say, if this task force is just move forward with what you're doing.
There's a charter, I mean,
Why would we change that?
Huh? Well, because there is from what I've seen of their meetings, there's a large number of these members who feel that they're not going to be able to.
But there's no
Deliver.
timeline on that.
Right.
So why,
Okay.
that doesn't change the charge.
So town meeting is really not of their concern. They are just there to do their work. That should really be the message, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
I hope I was clear. That's what I
Mike,
said.
We need to move on, but if you can be.
Okay.
Oh, the other mic behind you. You guys should
wasn't
leave.
kicking you out,
You're
Mr.
on
Morrison.
the next item, too. Yes, Mike.
I just want to say that I watched the task force meetings. I think it was rather courageous, to be honest with you. I know they wanted to be able to come up with, proposal for the selectmen for the town, but the timeline was inappropriate. Mr. Flanagan had from town meeting to put, if he wanted a task force, to put forth a task force much earlier to give them the opportunity, to work on this. And it was just too late. And it was unfair for the task force to be given the timeline that they have. I wish
We didn't give them a
Mr.
timeline, Mike.
What?
We did not give them a date or a
Yeah,
timeline.
well, Mr. Lapoli is moving forward. If we're going to get input from a task force, it has to be done before this January town meeting. Is that not correct?
Well, yeah, but that's his choice. That's not our,
Well,
his choice is to move forward.
I understand that. So there's,
they were to review something when it was submitted. It just got
there's a
submitted last week.
pardon?
They were to review whatever got submitted. It just got submitted, I think, a week or two ago.
Well, so, I mean, it seemed at town meeting that Mr. Lapoli was kind of going along with perhaps having a task force reviewing this. And unfortunately, he selected a late date to move forward, and that created a late date for the task force. It does not help the residents to review, feel good about his, what he wants to do there. And now we find out tonight that, and forgive me if I'm wrong, that it can also affect what happens on River Road, which my original understanding was that this was going to be isolated to Dascomb Road only.
The task force's charge is to compare the PUD project, which is the housing component project, with the commercial project.
But it was
That's their.
that was going to make it isolated only to Dascomb Road. And now
It's to that project.
I'm sorry, what I heard tonight, that it can also affect River Road.
The zoning article that was put forth would apply to all ID2 as it's written, but the task force is limited to the Dascomb
I
Road.
understand the task force, I'm saying I heard two things tonight. One, that it could also affect what happens on River Road, which originally, what my understanding was that the way Mr. Lapoli was progressing, that it was going to truly isolate the zoning to Dascomb Road. Now, I believe what I heard, it can also affect River Road. Am I wrong? Am I wrong? I'm asking a question.
The zoning article that adds in ID2 into the mixed use, that affects ID2, and ID2 is both Dascomb and River Road.
Okay, but I thought...
The zoning change, with town meeting approval, 2/3 vote. The second article, which is Mr. Lapoli's article, is then can they apply those new rules to a specific project? And then there's a question as to whether that will require a 2/3 vote or majority vote, and that's what we're waiting for clarification on.
So how does it affect River Road?
I think it affects River Road because I, like you, Mike, was under the impression we were talking only about the Dascomb Road area of ID2.
Right.
This PUD and all this, in my mind, I was thinking this applied to the Dascomb Road parcels, particularly Ms. Lapoli's parcel. I had no idea River Road was even in the equation until the warrant article came out. And I think now we have a task force that's only looking at Dascomb Road when there are going to be implications that come out of River Do, and we'll have no answers for that.
But you're not even going to get answers for Dascomb Road.
I agree with that, too.
From the task force, because they don't have enough time to do
I think we
their
all
job.
understand that, so we really need to move on. We all understand that, so. I think we know where we are. The task force is going to do
Then I guess it's up to Mr. Lapoli, but as a resident, I would vote against the project simply because I wanted input, and since this task force was put into place, I would have liked to have seen what they could have come up with. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, seeing no other, let's move on to the gift of funds. Board to consider voting to accept a gift of $20,000 from Lapoli Companies for the purpose of funding peer reviews and studies deemed necessary by the Dascomb Road Task Force.
So, as contemplated in the charge for the task force, the proponent for the project has provided funding to help offset the cost of the analysis by the task force. The task force has been working to
Doesn't
select...
offset the cost, it pays for it.
It offsets entirely.
Yeah, entirely. There you go. That's a key word because.
So, what's required is for the board to formally accept the gift for us to be able to use it for that purpose.
And I heard town council say that this doesn't relieve the developer in front of the planning board from adhering to whatever they ask, right? This is completely separate and in addition to whatever the planning board may ask for.
That's correct.
And they may not, so it's up to them.
It's up to them.
Right. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve acceptance of the...
There's
a motion, you have it.
How did the number, how did we come up with the
what is it?
20,000? What was the estimate on that? What was it?
It was the amount that was provided, and so, and then the task force is using that amount to conduct the peer reviews.
But
How
do
they
we
come
even
up-
have proposals for the peer reviews, like pricing, and do we know what
Yes.
this is? We do? For which peer reviews? Traffic and,
Yeah, that will be discussed on their next meeting, I believe, or unless they already decided this morning.
Yes, traffic and economic
Yeah, so
impact.
there's two consultants that the planning board has on their list of, or that the town has on their list of peer reviews.
Not the planning board.
No, well, they're on our list of people that we use for peer reviews, and they, the subcommittee interviewed or analyzed them and identified two that they want to work with, and if this gift is accepted, they will move forward with those efforts, both to study the economic impacts and the traffic.
So the traffic and economic impact peer review add up to $20,000 exactly?
Yes. The scope was established to meet the money available.
Dan?
Yep. I move, in accordance with the provisions of Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 53A, that the Board of Selectmen accept a gift of funds in the amount of $20,000 from the Lapoli Companies and approve the expenditure of said funds by the Dascomb Road Zoning Task Force to pay for peer reviews and studies that may be deemed necessary by the task force.
Been moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Just a question, what if there's more money needed? What's the commitment?
That's something that we certainly could discuss further.
we have no
We're
way to
not
pay for
aware
it.
that there's more money needed this time.
So we have a proposal now for the 20,000?
Two proposals each at 10, yes, I believe.
I asked
They
that
added
question
the
early
20.
on, and they said that they believed that this would cover it, and if it didn't, they would request more funds.
For the record, I'm going to oppose this just because I oppose the concept of the task force in the first place, so I'm going to oppose any funding that goes to it.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries incredibly 4-1.